Hey, welcome back everybody to another week at Beyond the Trailer Park. So this week, unfortunately, Ashley still can't make it back with us. She's still with her mom, but her mom's doing a lot better, and so that's good news, but she wants to be there and take care of her. So we understand that, and hopefully she'll be able to make it back with us next week. But Beth, of course, is joining us over from Pennsylvania, and things are looking slightly clearer over there, aren't they?
Yeah, at least in one eye. I had surgery on Wednesday for my cataract in my right eye, which was my worst eye. I was seeing, before surgery, I was seeing 22,400. Basically, I was blind. All I saw was light and dark and no color, no depth perception, triple vision. And now I don't know what the numbers are because I haven't been tested yet, but I can't see up close because they set my lens for distance vision. They're going to do that for both, and then I'll have to wear glasses for seeing up close, which I'm fine with. I've worn glasses almost my entire life, so. But it's still healing. I still feel like I have a grain of sand in there, and it does fatigue a little faster, but
Right.
my eyes are still screwed up because my script is nothing what it should be, but I don't have the nausea, and a lot of the dizziness that I've been having has gone away. So I'm hoping once I get both eyes, get my glasses, the dizziness will go bye bye
This would be good.
altogether. Yes, it
Yes.
would be very good because I actually can walk without putting my arm out to steady myself and figure out where I am in space. But as
Hmm.
my doctor explained it, what it is, I'm getting conflicting inputs from my ears and from my eyes, which
Right.
is affecting my balance and where my stroke was because it was so low into my cerebellum. We're very close to it. There is some balance issues, but we can't determine it until I get my eyes fixed.
Well, and that's just like motion sickness
Yes, it's exactly because that's the type of medication I'm taking for it.
because if you like sometimes with me if I read in a car, not always, it depends. Like if I'm tired or something, it's worse. But if you're reading in a car, that's because your eyes are not seeing any movement, but your ears are detecting that you're hurtling down the highway,
Yes,
and that's why
yeah,
you get motion sickness. So
yeah.
people
And
doesn't.
I've always had an issue with motion sickness ever since I was a child, even into my adulthood. I cannot ride in the back seat of a car because of that reason. I do okay in the front, but depending on the roads and the driver, like I get car sick every time my dad drives. But yeah, so it was, there was an issue there prior to the stroke, and the stroke just made it worse, and then the whole cataract thing. So we're hoping that the stroke issue has resolved, which would be normal. Um, and after I have my other eye done and get my glasses, I'll be able to work more on my balance. But at least I'm not having to like literally put my arm out to steady myself, and like the rooms have stopped spinning and all that stuff. So
Yeah, spinning rooms really suck because I had an ear infection and vertigo a couple of years ago, and
yes.
I wouldn't wish that on anybody. That's pretty horrible. So
Yeah, it's annoying because I'll be doing really really good. Like I'm trying to lengthen the time I stay awake, and I'm trying to get back to a semi-normal schedule. And I still, have to take a nap before I go to work. But when I wake up, I'm just so disoriented from the dizziness. It's like,
yep.
really, and then I have to re-kick. It's like my brain does, and it's so annoying. It's like
Yeah,
I just want to semi-normal. Just let me wake up and do things.
we'll get you there. We'll get you there. It might take a
So
little bit, but you'll get there.
yeah.
Just no more strokes. That's all. Just. So this week, joining us all the way from Texas, we have
Mm.
lovely and brainy Ms. Rachel Nanon Brown.
What did you say? Pennsylvania?
Yeah,
Yes,
we call it
What is
pencil.
that?
because it's really like living in Kentucky. And if you've ever been to
Oh,
Kentucky, there's not much difference, at least where I live. So I call it Pennsylvania. But I
Pennsylvania.
found out after the fact that I'm not the only one that uses that.
That's awesome.
It's a little hickish. I've been there.
Well,
Yeah.
the fact that you said hickish, what a lot of people don't realize is that term actually has this etymology not too far from here.
Right. Right.
Because of the hickers, which are the guys that would scrape the bark off the trees, and we're very big in lumber industry, besides powder and metal.
Is that
Wow.
where Hicks comes from?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, a hick is a guy that stands on the log and takes the bark off. They're hicking the tree. And this area, and I believe parts of West Virginia, before mining, obviously, became prominent. Yeah, the hicks would stay outside of town. They weren't welcome into town to come into the bars, so they started using the term hick. And like down in West Virginia with the mining, a redneck is actually for lack of a better term, a union buster that used to wear a red bandana around their neck. And they were considered basically union busters. They would go in, and that's where that term comes from. And hick has more of a regional etymology here, where redneck is more in Virginia.
Interesting. I think Texas has all of the above.
Yes.
Depending on what city you're going into. Dallas isn't too bad.
Yeah.
But you get an hour out of Dallas and you start getting to places called like Ranger, Texas and Forney, and you start getting some questionable things and some questionable ideas, and people don't like the back of my car very much.
Well, it's
bet.
like, I know when I was in El Paso, I was like, I had friends trying to convince me to move to Texas, and I have a friend that lives in Houston, and I said, I'm like, honey, I am like too much of a northerner in Texas. I discovered that when I lived in El Paso.
Yeah.
It's like, there was no way.
Well, I mean, I've had like Darwin stickers, and I don't have anything obviously offensive on the back of my car unless you find evolution offensive, which is offensive to a lot of people in Texas. But I don't have, yeah, they get offended by that kind of stuff. But I don't ever put like purposefully offensive things. Like I used to have well, I have it on my wall, and it's like a license plate border, and it says, "I think, therefore I'm an atheist." I would never put that on my car because it's just asking for it. But in Texas, I just have like a Darwin sticker and like another Darwin, like a fish, and then honk if you understand punctuated equilibrium. And I got my back left tire stabbed out 3 times.
Damn.
So, yeah, I thought I just had a flat, and I just showed up, and I'm like, I have a flat, and they're like, no, you got stabbed 3 times in your tire. Oh.
And whoever did it probably has no fucking clue what punctuated
equilibrium is.
Like, yeah, no, I see so many people. Like, I'll pull up to like a stoplight and I'll just sit there and look in my rearview mirror, and I'll have people like look and then squint and then look at their phone, and then usually if there's somebody next to them, they'll start talking, and then they'll both look at the back of my car again, like, oh my god, how dare she?
They looked and found out. Oh my god!
Yeah, they Googled it, like in the time that we're sitting there, and I'm like sitting there just smiling, like, "Yep, it's coming up. Now you understand." Yes.
They'd hate the back of my car, man. I have all kinds of obnoxious atheist stuff on the back of my car, and I mean, like, well, the first one I ever got, and I need to find a new one or find a way to fix it because all the chrome is worn off it now.
Yeah.
But it's a Jesus fish on a fish hook.
Oh my gosh. I don't think I could get away with that in Dallas.
That was the first one I ever got, and now I have the Flying Spaghetti Monster fish.
Yep. And
my other favorite, it's a Trek fish with the nacelles on the end of the fish. Then I've got the giant Dawkins A. There's another Flying Spaghetti Monster, and then I got a couple of stickers when I was at ReasonCon. One, it's got the humanist sign, and it says, "I believe in good." But the one that would probably get all of my tires stabbed. It says, "The Bible, where life begins at deception."
Oh my gosh! Yeah, you're a lot braver than I am, man.
here, that's
you can get away with that up in Canada.
Yeah.
It's something you mentioned on your recent interview.
Yes.
I mean, one of the difference between Canada and the United States. I don't even think where I'm at, I could even get away with that. Now, maybe in Buffalo, maybe in New York City or LA, but where I'm at, no.
Yeah. I've never, like, also on top of all the obnoxious atheist stuff I have in my car, I have, there's a couple of paw-shaped magnets, and one says, my children have 4 paws, and the other one says, one cat away from crazy cat lady. And then I have, like, the stick figure family with 2 adults and 5 cats, so I've gotten comments about the cat stuff, but never the atheist stuff. Like,
yeah, they don't want to open the conversation, maybe.
That could be because around here, because we tend to be sort of, everybody do their own thing kind of people. Somebody who's that obnoxious on the back of my car, they probably like, oh, she's going to talk to me about that. I think I'll just mention it.
Yeah, that's a heavy conversation. This person's obviously got some opinions. Now in Texas, people are like, oh, you have opinions on science? Wow, I need to yell at you and, assume I know everything and go, oh, you believe come with monkeys? I'm like, do you know who you're going up against?
If I ever go and, like, spend any time somewhere in Texas, I'm bringing my glory hole shirt.
Mm-hmm.
I wore it in Nashville, and I never got any overt comments, although Bobby says I got a shit ton of looks.
Yeah, I'm sure you did.
He's like, I'm just going to stand here and watch you, because that's, like, way more entertaining.
I mean, hell, I wore my Proud to Be an Ape shirt, and it has, like, a couple of apes with smiley faces, and it's just a cute shirt, but it's Proud to Be an Ape, and I walked through Walmart, and I was killed, like, 50 times with people's eyes. Yeah.
Wow.
It was pretty hilarious, and I saw people like peeking around the corners. I'm like, is it really that crazy, guys?
Well, considering the reaction I got to one shirt I had here, and it wasn't even bad. It just said something like, I was born difficult, and people were like fucking flipping out over it. I could just imagine what would happen. I mean, if I wore something atheist or evolution. Not that anybody here would know what fucking evolution was.
Yeah, no one knows here either. They just know they're offended.
Yeah, they're not supposed to like it, whatever the hell.
Well, it's like my ex-brother-in-law posted a meme a couple years ago about Fareed Zakaria's book that President Obama was reading at the time. It was before the 2008 election, but he posted this like 2 years ago. So I called him out and I said, "Did you even read the book? Because it's not what this meme is saying. It's about, it's about post-Americanism and the rise of basically third world countries like India and Pakistan and stuff like that. It had nothing to do with Islam taking over the world." And he's like, well, no, and I'm like, would you like my copy? Huh?
I have to read things? No.
It's like the meme I posted the other day, and the Muslim guy was getting all pissed off, and I'm like, it's not even about Islam, you idiot.
Yeah.
It was
yeah, it's gonna work nice in my part 2 segment.
It's a comic. It's speaking about the quote religious freedom laws that people are trying to that have passed and are trying to pass, and it shows ISIS butchers, and on the front it's like a butcher shop, and it says, "We reserve the right to behead, gays, atheists, or anyone we disagree with." And it's speaking to, like, this is the end of the road where you people think you're going and you don't realize that's where you're going, kind of thing. And this Muslim came on the thread and was like, Islam is not like that and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, dude, you completely missed the point. And then
not only did he miss the point of the meme, he said, show me proof that in the Quran that Islam teaches beheading and injuring of infidels. And I'm like, I threw one verse, and I'm not anywhere. Deb knows Islam. I just tinker with it. I threw one verse off and then he ran away.
Yep.
Yeah, people love to wake up offended and primed to be offended, and they watch out for those little clues and those little flags or imaginary flags, and they are just primed to jump.
Oh, yeah.
That can be applied to a lot of situations.
Well, that's actually what I'm starting to approach with my segment tonight, dealing with Vaxxed with Andrew Wakefield. I mean, he's crying persecution and violation of First Amendment rights. Well, fucktard better go back to fucking UK because his First Amendment rights were not being affected because Tribeca isn't the government.
Yeah.
It's like, so yeah, that fits in good.
One thing that always gets right-wing nut jobs in a tizzy, of course, is anything to do with sex. So, of course,
yeah, because sex is icky and only for reproduction, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. All the evidence points to that.
Uh-huh. Well, Rachel's going to tell us why we do what we do and why we a lot of us like sex. Not everybody likes sex. There are people who aren't interested, but a lot of us do, and there are really good reasons why that we do, and why we like certain things, and why we act certain ways, and all of that sort of thing. And because, of course, you know, religious people think that we can just turn that shit off like a fucking switch, which, yeah, no.
Right.
That does not work.
Yeah, it's definitely a big conversation.
Oh, for sure. And now we know that, you know, technically sex is for making babies, but there's a whole hell of a lot more to it than that.
I like to say that sex, the end of sex, often ends up in babies, but the reason why natural selection had to manipulate creatures into enjoying sex and wanting to have sex without even thinking about babies is because of the fact that animals don't automatically want to do that. So they have to manipulate the brain to make them have these urges. I mean, you see a cat in heat. The thing switches on and goes crazy. It's not thinking, I literally want to have kittens. Just like most 16-year-olds or 15-year-olds, they hit puberty, what do? No, they don't go, I want to have babies. You just go, I'm interested in this. I'm interested in this imagery. I have feelings. And I'm going to jump on it. Uh-oh, I'm pregnant. It's not actually the fact that nature designed it to go, sex is only for babies. Sex is something that's supposed to be, that's kind of been manipulated in different species to end up with babies. But now that I guess, that has occurred in nature, nature has manipulated it so that animals can also use the process of sex in different ways. For social bonding, like the bonobos, you can create a whole social structure on, you know, giving and receiving pleasure, remembering who gave you what, you know, who treated you well, because of the fact that nature had to make sex feel good to convince them to accidentally have babies. So,
okay.
I mean, it's such a huge topic because you can start from the origins of sex, which is the origins of the sperm and egg, which is a huge topic, and I'm not going to go into that. But because of the fact that whenever, like, religious people like to talk about sex, they simplify the hell out of it. They go, okay, sex equals babies. Sex is only for married people. Women, I mean, if you go more extreme, they often kind of curve towards women aren't really supposed to be enjoying it. It's not for enjoyment.
Yes. Well, there was some idiot, I came across my news feed earlier in the week, some idiot preacher was like, you know, the female orgasm is of Satan, and, you know, women should never have orgasms, and that's evil, and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Well, it's just like the Mormons with their whole anti-masturbation bullshit.
Yes.
Right. So religion, when you start to learn more about sex, you start to see how simplified and complete opposite religion's take on sex is. You'll have that you're supposed to not masturbate as a boy, right? And you're supposed to hide these urges to get rid of it. If you have an urge to masturbate, don't freaking do it. And it's unnatural for you to want to. So you look at the science side and you go, okay, obviously you can't say that something's unnatural. That literally happens in every boy after they hit puberty. Every single one. Even if they don't masturbate, they end up having wet dreams. They end up doing things in their sleep. They end up fantasizing about ridiculous shit. I mean, it's just the way it is. If you repress it, boys, this will happen. And in girls, it happens too. I was psychotic when I hit 12 years old. Like, I found softcore porn. I was psychotic because I didn't know why it was interesting, but it freaking was, because I hit puberty, and that's the reason for puberty.
It's like I remember finding the naked New Guinea tribe in the National Geographic is like,
why is it so interesting? Like,
had that damn thing in the closet for years.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, it just happens. So there has to be a scientific reason for it. There has to be a psychology behind why, once you hit puberty, you have this sexual change. Well, science will say, well, when you hit puberty, that means you're able to at least have babies.
Yeah.
And for boys, they actually found that this constant urge to masturbate or to release, semen is actually linked to the fact that the longer sperm is in existence after it's been produced, the more errors will start to happen in the sperm. The more mutation, the more issues that happen in sperm. So you have to have a constant resupplying of sperm to end up having healthy sperm be the one to enter a female.
So they get kind of stale, basically.
Yeah. As soon as they're created, there's kind of an expiration date on quality for the sperm. So what happens to boys? If they don't touch themselves, the body's eventually like, okay, then you're going to do it in your sleep, because the sperm is losing quality over time. So they look at these boys and go, don't masturbate. It's terrible for you. It's a sin. And what boys end up feeling guilty. Yes. And they don't know why. I mean, because why would the devil, or why would God give them these urges? Well, it's the devil. Well, no, science shows us this is a natural process, and it's extremely unhealthy to not do it.
I even had a Muslim guy message me, and I thankfully I don't get those messages much anymore, but for a while there I was getting all kinds of these perverted guys in my PMs. But this one guy, he started off kind of pervy, but he toned it back a bit. When I don't get fazed by it, then it's no fun for them, right? So
right.
This guy, said he was from Pakistan and claimed that he didn't masturbate, but he wanted porn. I never quite figured that out, but he was like, our imam told us that it's evil and you won't be able to satisfy your wife if you do it, and you'll end up infertile and all of this shit. And it's like, no.
The complete opposite. You actually, you're losing quality of sperm. I mean, eventually it's going to seep out no matter what, but women also have urges. I mean, women are actually on the side of where natural selection starts to use sexual interest and orgasms as ways to find mates. Ones that stick around longer, ones that pay attention to you more, ones that you find the most attractive end up with you having more orgasms. They've already shown studies that women that are really attracted to the men that they're sleeping with will always have more orgasms than the men that they're not as attracted to. They will still have orgasms, but more attractive men cause more orgasms. And so, what is attraction? Attraction is looking at the external, the way that the genotype is expressed on the outside, but that's only one side of the coin, because that's where love comes in, and bonding. Because you can love and bond with someone who doesn't look like Brad Pitt, and that will actually outrun being highly attracted to somebody. You'll have more orgasms because you bonded.
I don't know about you, but I've experienced where I'll meet somebody and it's like I'm not, repelled by them, but I'm not like, oh my God, they're hot. But as I've got to know them and I develop a care and a love for them, suddenly they appear more attractive.
Right. So that's where women, we operate more on our interest in long-term mates, and long-term mates are often connected to men that we deem that are safe to be around, ones that listen to us, care about us, might care about our children, good with our family, Sure, they don't look like Brad Pitt because the Brad Pitts are often spreading their seed everywhere because they have high testosterone, high sex drives. They usually end up being a little bit more, I don't know, not as what's the word? I don't want to offend really attractive dudes because not everyone cheats. But there is studies that show that more testosterone, bigger jaws equals more cheating.
More prolific, perhaps?
Yes, prolific, which women are too, because we all have varying sex drives. But women often will end up bonding with someone who shows characteristics of women and men. Softer jawlines, people that are more caring, and the longer you spend with this person, the more sex that you have, the more orgasms that you have, the more bonding you have, because of the fact that orgasms release oxytocin. And oxytocin is a bonding chemical with the person that you're with. And that person is sticking around longer, so you're getting more oxytocin releases with that person. So you're ending up bonding using sex. So even if you don't have a baby, you're creating relationships based on orgasms, based on sex releases. So of course, sex is good for you. It creates relationships. It creates bonding, happiness, release. So to just say it's for babies is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's how we bond with somebody.
I find it kind of interesting. There's 2 points. First of all, you keep suggestion, and maybe I don't know if it's intentional or not. I just find it funny that you talk about heterosexual relationships.
Yes, only because those are the main drivers for natural selection, but that doesn't mean...
That because the studies has everything you said.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, that's what I look for in my partner, and so I'm wondering, have they ever done any studies along that line where, not just male-female, but female-female, male-male?
Oh, absolutely, because women don't just orgasm with men, of course. We can make ourselves orgasm, we can orgasm with women. We orgasm based on attraction. So if you are someone who either has attractions for both or for just women, if that person makes you orgasm, it makes you release oxytocin through bonding, hugging, kissing, orgasm, you're still creating a bond with that person. It's it's a much more stronger, I guess, waterfall for women. So if it's a woman and woman, it's still the same thing. They're both experiencing this buildup of bonds through oxytocin release and orgasm. Absolutely.
Well, part of the reason I find that interesting is, about 8 years ago, I actually had somebody that I worked with who never been around a gay person. And she actually came up to me after about 2 years and apologized to me because her mother-in-law is in a lesbian relationship, and there was a lot of animosity, and it kind of toned down over the years as she got to know me. And I just point blank looked at her and said, you want to know the only difference between you and I as far as our what we do? I said, I just happen to like to fuck women.
Yeah.
That's it. I said everything else we do, from getting up in the morning to going to bed at night.
You don't eat gay cereal and take a gay shower.
Yeah, and I said it's exactly the same. I said, and how I love my partner is no different than you.
Absolutely.
Every chemical is the same. That's where I was leading to. And I find it funny when you talk about growing up and being an adolescent. I must be the oddball because I didn't give a flying fuck about sex until I was about 24. But I was also in a long-term relationship, and all I gave a crap about was hockey.
I mean, yeah, it's like sexuality is so varied in people. I mean, it's absolutely it's a huge continuum. Like, I have learned that almost everything in life is gray. Everything is a spectrum. Yes. And sexuality, from being a heterosexual female to being a homosexual female, and being a heterosexual male to being a homosexual male, it's a huge spectrum. And it's all because of the way that we develop in the womb. We start out with a certain brain type. It's feminized. You become more masculinized depending on how much testosterone is injected into the womb. and you end up with a huge varying spectrum of what you are attracted to in imagery with breasts or, vaginas or, broad shoulders or feminine whatever. It's a huge spectrum.
Well, and I think that's what religion ignores.
Yes, absolutely.
They like, I'm not embarrassed by it, but I'm probably one of the few women that can grow a full beard.
Right. Okay. That's interesting.
And the reason being is I have a higher level of testosterone in my system, and I have since I was a child.
Right.
I used to drive my mom and dad nuts. I'd outgrow my clothes every 3 months. Why? I was a bodybuilder.
Right. Okay. So
I had a 32-inch thigh and a 28-inch waist.
Right.
I mean, my legs are and still are actually, and thank God, are my pride and joy. I played hockey. I started playing hockey when I was 3, so my legs were very overdeveloped. But I used to drive nuts because I used to outgrow my shirts. I could not go and lift for training purposes for sports without putting on muscle mass.
Right.
And it's just like, but I mean, I have some friends who have a similar problem who are totally embarrassed by it. And I can understand why. And it's just like, you know what? Fuck it.
Yeah, I think if we were educated, if everyone was educated on the topic of womb development and how someone is a female and how that's a different subject than gender, you have sexual interest. They're different things, and how you can have a vagina and be interested in vaginas.
Yeah.
Or it's all kind of centered around how much testosterone is in the womb at what time. So a female baby with a little bit more testosterone at a late development versus an early development can change if your brain becomes more masculinized in that you are either acting more male or being interested in females. There's a complete difference too. You can act like a male but still be interested in males. It's a huge spectrum.
There are straight women that would be considered a quote tomboy.
Right.
Oh, I was a tomboy through and through. I still am.
It's a huge spectrum, and I find it so stupid that our society has these categories of tomboys and sissy men, and we don't go, wait a minute, why do we have women acting at this huge spectrum and this men acting at this huge spectrum? And not realize it's a goddamn spectrum. We don't have women and men, and that's it.
Like, look at me. Like, I'm extremely feminine. At least I think so. Like, I love frilly shit and dresses and makeup.
I'm the exact opposite.
Yeah, but because most people would think, oh, that stereotypical woman, blah blah blah. I have zero desire to ever have children. Like the is just like you, and I am not domestic in the least now. Like and so even though I fit the sort of vision of a typical woman, I don't follow any of the sort of stereotypes that go with it.
Right. There's a whole bunch of different areas of the topic, and it's just silly to think man equals person with muscle, who's interested in women, who is super dominant, in control, angry, territorial, etc., and then have the women submissive, tiny, interested in men. I mean, you have those, absolutely. But there's 90% of people are variants of that. Yes, and that's the way it has to be. You can't have absolute carbon copies. You have to have variants in the species. And it's all the difference of what your genitalia on the outside looks like, what your body looks like, maybe more hair, maybe more muscle, or less hair, less muscle, taller, smaller, etc. What you're interested into sexually, how you express yourself when it comes to if you're more alpha versus beta, and then there's interest in childbearing. It's a huge spectrum. It's not just I am man, man is Tarzan, beat on chest. It's just not like that.
Well, I find it fascinating because, and I've mentioned this to Deb before, is that growing up, I don't know how many times I was sent to the boys' bathroom. Now, my hair is below my shoulders now, but I always wore my hair short, especially when I worked in the factories, because it got up to 140 degrees in the summer, and it was a lot easier to take care of my hair when I didn't have any.
Mm-hmm.
So even like today, even at 50, before I grew my hair out, if I had my jacket on, people would assume I was a guy. And I know for me, like when I was trying to sort out my sexuality, I actually contemplated, um, was I a boy or a girl? Was I transgender or not? And my only role model back growing up was Renee Richards. So I'm going back a few years. And I just find it fascinating because I've had people question, well, because I'm a lesbian, it's like I have no interest in guys. Yeah, well, why don't you become a guy? It's like I
Right.
don't want to. It has
Right.
my sex and my sexuality, and this is one of the issues that
Mm-hmm.
with the quote bathroom bills is they're confusing sex and sexuality
Right.
and who you love. They're just jumbling it
They
all
don't
together.
they don't realize that there's a huge difference between
Yeah.
who you feel you are, how you
Yeah.
express yourself, and who you're interested in. You can absolutely
Yeah.
be a transgender, a male who is transgender to a female who is interested in females, but you
Yeah.
want to be a
Yes.
female. That is an
Yeah.
absolute brain and body phenomenon. It's just the way it is.
I mean, I've been gay since I can remember. I was like 5, and it's like even being in it, for lack of a better word, for so long, I still have trouble even wrapping my head around it. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just like, it's just like it's trying to differentiate sexuality,
Mm-hmm.
and who we are, because a lot of people, well, the whole reparative therapy thing, and thankfully I've had the attitude but never got forced into that fucking bullshit. And it's just like you cannot change the core of who you are.
Right.
It's like, and they don't get. I mean, they don't get it, and it's just like they try to control it. And look at the Catholic Church. I'm sorry, they got. I mean, and it's not just the Catholic Church, but I'm using them as an example. You got priests who have been celibate pretty much their entire lives,
Super
and
unhealthy.
yeah, I mean, it's just like, and trying to change it. Like I know there's been a couple instances where some within the Catholic churches had let these priests marry, and the Catholic Church is like, oh no, and it's just like they
And
don't want to lose that control.
the stupid part is earlier in the history of the Catholic Church, priests did marry.
Yeah.
And even after they said, well, no, you can't marry, a good chunk of them would keep mistresses and father all kinds of kids because they recognized that on some level it just kind of needed to happen. And so even though they couldn't legally marry, they still had mistresses. I mean, my favorite one is Rodrigo Borgia, of course, and he famously had 2 long-term mistresses. There were others, but there were 2 that were his main mistresses, and he fathered like 5 children with them that became famous. And that was not unheard of at the time. Like when you hear people talk about it now, they're like, oh, he was such a terrible pope and blah blah blah. No, he was common.
Right.
It just so happened that he became famous for a lot of other reasons too, but no, that was
It's just insanity, and the abuse on people from religion when it comes to sexuality is vast, because even for popes who are convinced that they shouldn't have relationships, they shouldn't be doing anything, they break, because the human psychology not only needs sexuality but needs bonding. It's the
yes.
way that men need bonding too. Men need mates. They need, whether it's they need a male mate or a female mate, whatever they're interested in, they're social creatures just like females. They enjoy this company, this closeness, and they enjoy obviously their sexuality. And to deprive them of that, I mean, I'm convinced that this raping of children in the Catholic Church is linked to the fact that they had this huge sexual repression.
Oh,
And then they
absolutely.
give them little boys who don't know any better. If these
Yeah,
men had sexual relationships with women in a normal case like everyone else does, I don't think we'd be seeing this.
I don't think so either. And what people don't realize, because the right wing nut jobs are, oh well, they're just gay, and that's why they,
No.
No.
because and the reason why, well, there's a couple of reasons why the victims tended to be boys. Was number one, who do they see all the time? Altar
Yeah.
boys.
Yeah.
And two, boys are less likely to report what's going on because of the role of you need to be strong and all of that we foist onto boys. So they're far less likely to say I was taken advantage of and I was sexually abused, because that's considered a weakness.
And to compare being interested in the sexuality with children, comparing that to being gay is ridiculous.
It
To say
is.
that they're gay, thus they want to touch children of the same sex. No, gay men are interested in touching other gay men, not gay boys. Gay boys is a pedophile, okay? That's not the same thing.
Exactly.
Well, they're trying to make it out now, and I'm not saying that it's not possible. And I knew when I was 5 years old that I was different. But to say that a child under, we'll say, the age of 11, because technically that's what pedophilia is that to say that they know already that they are gay is like, instead of putting the onus on the adult, they're trying, it's all of shifting of responsibility, and that's what the church is very good at. It's
Yeah.
just like, yeah, let's blame it's victim blaming.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we had an incident here in PA right after the Maurizio case. One of the bishops said, it's the victim's fault. And he took some shit for that, too. And he's like, that's not what I mean. It was like, no, that's what you said, dumbass.
I had this Muslim guy in a thread. It was actually that thread on Acharya's page last year, and this asshole, he was basically victim blaming in the thread, like, the analogy of, well, if you leave your front door unlocked, you can expect to be robbed and all of that shit. And I said, so what did I as a 10-year-old do to
I
cause
remember this.
molested? And the guy was like, well, you must have been parading around naked or something to cause that to happen. Like, are you fucking kidding?
I
Like
mean,
the
Well,
that's a ridiculous
I never
comparison.
thought of it until just now. I should say, well, what did I do wrong to cause my rape by another female?
yeah,
Yeah, and
exactly.
it seems like people view this so differently. Like we said, well, if you leave your door unlocked, you're asking to be robbed. But in this society, we still go, but the robber did a really freaking bad thing, and if we catch him, we're putting them in jail. We don't go, why did you leave your door unlocked? Why don't you have bars on your window? We don't do that. But with sex, we do. We're like, well, I mean, were you making out with him? Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean I wanted to have sex with him. Well, you probably shouldn't have been making out with him then. Wait a
Yeah,
minute, just because I kiss him means I've lost all privileges of, oh, interesting.
that's
Yeah.
yeah. I want
Or
to.
what were you wearing to suggest? Or
Yeah.
what did you do? I love the wearing one, because it's like, well, what I wear now is what I've basically always wear. I'm a sweats and t-shirt type of girl. I think the last time I wore a dress, I was maybe a freshman in college. It's like, yeah, mom tried, didn't
Yeah.
work so well. It's like,
You can
so
walk naked through the street, and that does not mean that people are
exactly.
allowed to have sex with
You
you.
know what? Even
Yeah.
if you're wearing a T-shirt that says "fuck me now,"
Right.
still get to say no.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, it's bizarre. And it's like, I mean, and this is the thing why teaching evolution is so important, because it's like, my views actually have morphed the more I've learned about evolution and how it works. And I mean, I don't know anywhere like you do, probably, but it's just like, it's
I
kind of
don't have a
changed the
life
way.
outside of reading, so.
It's funny. It's really, and that's what the church is afraid of, and your state is a prime example of it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've played World of Warcraft for like 10 years, and I had met a friend on there who actually has become an activist in the community. She's a Christian. She's a good friend of mine, and I won't use her name, but she pretty much feels that she's bisexual, and she once told me that, well, after we became friends, we realized I was very open-minded, that I would always accept her. I would never look down on her as someone who might be interested in females when she's married to a man. And she eventually told me that she was more interested in females more than males, and that her husband was actually kind of feminine. I was like, oh, that's great. Let's talk about it. And she told me how kind of guilty she would feel about these because she was a Christian. And I was like, you know what? The more we're going to talk, the more you're going to realize that as a scientist and an obsessor about evolution, everything I will tell you will make you feel better about yourself, and to realize that you are a human being and you are a natural occurrence, and you should never feel shame about this, because sexuality is a very ranging thing. And eventually, she just openly talked to me about it now. She's absolutely proud of it. I don't think she has as much guilt as she used to. She realizes that evolution tells you to love yourself.
Yes.
That is freaking awesome.
I mean, like, the guilt bullshit that religion heaps on people is unreal. I've talked to several former Mormons, for example. We talked about them sort of waging war on masturbation, and it's like masturbation, like you said, like for guys, it's essential because they got to get rid of the stale sperm somewhere, and to repress that part of yourself. And I mean, I've heard religious people calling it self-rape. Like, come on.
That is so insane. And there's a documentary called Why Sex is Fun by Curiosity. That's a really good documentary. It's an hour long, about what orgasms and sex do to the brain, and what chemicals are released, and how it makes people feel. And to say that having this time alone, I mean, just because we don't have this release like men do, like they need to redo their sperm, doesn't mean that orgasms aren't extremely healthy for the brain and the body. Absolutely. So to say that masturbation is self-rape it's just preposterous. It's denying people a natural thing. Animals masturbate all over the animal kingdom. They masturbate each other. They are having sex with the same sex constantly. For most of the mating year, they will end up having sex with the same damn sex. It's just the way it is.
And then they tell me, oh, well, that's just a dominance thing. It's like...
Yeah, there's no evidence of that so freaking ever.
Well, let's talk about that, because that's, like I say, I've been told that before. If you get the whole, well, homosexuality is not natural and anal sex is natural.
What does that mean to say that? It's not natural.
So where does this idea come from that activity in animals is dominance?
Okay. So where it comes from is definitely just an excuse. So if what they were saying is true, we would see animals that are more dominant, maybe when individual A is more dominant than B. And then you enter maybe a C. If you have 3 deer, A is more dominant, so you see A female maybe mounting a B female because it's trying to show dominance, or maybe an A male mounting a B male. Like, okay, well, that means A is more dominant. But then 10 minutes later, you see B mounting A. And then you see C mounting A. But B then mounts C. You're like, wait a minute. I thought A was only doing this to prove it's dominant over B.
Yeah.
But now B is on top of A, and they're both ignoring females that are right next to them.
Yeah.
There's probably a little bit of evidence that sometimes that does happen. I don't know of it. But whenever you go, okay, you have a claim, let's look for the evidence.
Yes.
No, that's not what you see. You see individuals that are showing dominance, receiving dominance right back at them. So how is that showing any damn dominance?
That's an actual...
Basically, you're gonna fuck who you're gonna fuck, and hopefully you eventually fall in love.
And a lot of animals, especially the higher ordered animals, the bigger brains, use these sexual favors as like, hey, we're buddies. Like, you're going to be with me whenever they challenge me, right? Like, hey, we're friends. I'm going to do this to you because it makes you feel good. You're going to do it back, too. Awesome.
You just said a key word, I think, Rachel, is sexual favors.
Mm-hmm. To make each other feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and then I will always bring up, because they're like, well, but whenever a fertile female shows up, the males will stop mating with each other and they'll go to the female because that's where their sexual interest is. But if they need an example of a 100% homosexual animal, rams are perfect because they are literally, I think they're called non-movers or non something. There's an actual term for them.
Okay.
And farmers of sheep and rams, where most of the year males will mount each other only because females aren't giving off their pheromones. They're not interesting whatsoever, so they're mounting each other most of the year. But then the mating season comes up, females then start acting like males to interest the males, and then will waft their tails, will waft the pheromones. And the male then goes, okay, that's a new pheromone. I'm interested, and she's acting like a male. She's kicking, she's butting. Okay, I'll mount her. Now I'm interested. Female stops making pheromones. It leaves. They start mounting each other. But every once in a while, there's a male ram where the females show up, waft the pheromones, aren't interested whatsoever. What do? They mount males all year long. They don't like females at all.
That still, though, is really telling where the female acts like a male in order to get laid, basically. And I wonder if that's some kind of mechanism so that once they have been mounted and they're either pregnant, hopefully pregnant, then they don't want to be bothered by randy ass male. So
then they start acting like females again, and they're not interested. Yeah, they have to act like dudes to get dudes to be interested in them.
And it makes sense if their way of enticing each other is to be, pretty violent, I guess, for lack of a better word.
They kick each other, they butt each other, bite each other, they act like dudes.
If you're a pregnant female, you don't want to be doing that shit.
Yeah, exactly. So they stop. But some males don't react to that pheromone. And what does that equal? A homosexual ram.
I have one of my cats here. I used to have, at the time, I had 3 males and a female. And because the males were all neutered, I didn't bother spaying the female. And she was relatively quiet, so she didn't make a whole lot of noise. But what I noticed was when she did go into heat, one of the males, and he'd been neutered since he was fairly young, like a year-ish, something like that. But he would try and mount her.
Right.
And now he didn't. You could tell he kind of only half knew what he was supposed to do.
Yeah, my cat mounted the other cat like in like a cross instead of on top of each other. I'm like, that's her rib cage.
Well, he would kind of stamp around on her hind end, and after a few minutes, he'd just haul off and deck him. But the other male, when she would walk around in front of him, well, the second of the 3, she would walk around in front of him and wave her butt in his face and whatever, and where the first one would be like, ooh, baby, and try and do his thing, the second one would take a sniff and be like, ah, and run away, and go and mount the other male.
Interesting.
Yeah. At the time, I thought, okay, I have a gay cat. Right? He smells the female, and he turns tail and runs and gets the other boy. Well, that stayed that way, and then a few years later, the male that had been mounted had passed away, and I had a younger female, like a second one, and I didn't bother spaying her either. So now when she went in heat, both males went after her. The one that previously was not interested was now interested in her, but not the first female.
Yep, that's probably just a variance in what their pheromones smell like, which is something that natural selection does all the time. I mean, that's a great way to cause species to diverge, is causing a variant in the way that pheromones smell, and you'll end up having males that prefer certain smells and won't
Yeah.
mate with other. Yeah, absolutely. But with like female cats, there's such a perfect example of how you cannot control sexuality. Whenever
Yes.
a cat goes into heat, like especially the big cats, like the leopards and tigers, you'll see, especially leopards, they're solitary creatures. They hate each other. Males and females hate each other, and they will
Mhm.
kill each other on sight normally. But when a female goes into heat, it will tolerate a certain male coming a certain distance, but they'll like randomly start fighting each other, biting each other, scratching each other, swatting at each other. But the female will constantly go into a low position, but it'll
Yeah.
still be screaming and have like teeth. You could tell she still hates him, but her brain, she's out of control because her hormones are telling her, nope, you need to get in this position for a certain amount of time. Don't kill him, and eventually it'll be over. And you can either kill him if he doesn't leave, or hopefully he'll leave you alone. But you can tell like she can't control that shit. It's her hormones telling her no. You gotta go
And
for a second.
and the other thing is, now I don't know what kind of memory cats have, but intercourse for cats is quite painful.
Right, and with evolution, there's a reason for everything. So if males have spikes, what will be
Yeah.
the reason for spikes? Well, it pretty much is once you're in, the female's gonna try to get out. It doesn't want you, it doesn't like you, it wants to fight you. So
Yeah.
you get spikes in. What happens? The female can't get out. So you
Yeah.
you cause that to be pregnant, even though it wants to slit your throat.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
And so it keeps the penetration
yeah.
long duration to make sure that all of the little kitties get in there that can get in there.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. But now, see, so we don't have
Spikes.
mechanisms like that.
Right.
So 'cause for us, it feels damn good, and we're like, oh yeah, bring that on.
Right, because you have leopards who are solitary creatures. They don't need each other. They don't want each other. They don't talk to each other. They don't need each other to help with babies. Humans, on the other hand, need to pick mates that are going to stick around because you're going to be pregnant for 8 months,
Yeah.
breastfeeding for 2 years, and then you're going to have a toddler that's useless until the age of 8. So what
Yeah.
do? We want to have long-term sex. We want to have bonding with our partner. We don't want to have, stick it and leave because
Yes.
those babies aren't going to probably survive with their fathers. So we have no reason for spikes. We're not going to run away.
Exactly. Yeah, it's awfully hard to run away when you're dragging a baby along with you.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's mate selection. If you end up allowing someone to enter, enter into that realm with you, then why there's no need for spikes because you've accepted them. You've had a social relationship with that person and you create bonding because you trust them. You want them around. You want their help.
Here's something is because we do this, and I don't know that any other maybe primates do, but why do we kiss?
Why do we kiss? Kissing will actually, I know, is a direct transfer of testosterone from spit.
Ah,
And it's kind of it's an interaction because the mouth is extremely sensitive.
right.
And when it comes to intimacy and bonding and being close with another of your species, since we want to do it for longer periods of time, it's not like a three hump and then go like chimps are a lot of the times.
Yes.
We have long-term bonding. We want to release more oxytocin. We need more contact for longer periods of time because we need to build trust. And so not only does sex last a little bit longer, not too much longer,
Yeah.
but it does last a little bit longer for males,
Yeah.
which people wonder why men, ejaculate in 10 seconds if they can't control it. It's because we're damn primates. But kissing is another mechanism to transfer sexual interest, to spend more time saying, I'm interested in you. I want you to release endorphins, oxytocin to bond with me.
Mhm.
Let's keep going. Let's build a relationship together. It's a bonding mechanism.
Okay. Yeah, because I couldn't think. Do primates do that? I don't think they.
Um, not not to our extent.
Right.
They do a little bit, which is still kind of an intimacy thing. You'll see like two females will do it sometimes.
Okay.
Um, because they manipulate their world with their mouths as well.
Right.
But they definitely don't do it as long as we do, because we need more time to develop our babies. So we need long-term mates.
They tend to use grooming as more of an intimate activity.
Right. But we don't have hair, so what do? We kiss each other, talk to each other.
Yeah, because we have hair, but we don't have like a bodies. You know, they sit there and like pick through each other's backs for hours on end. Like we
lost the need for that.
I think there might be some guys out there that maybe could do that, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be quite a turnoff versus an opportunity. Like, hey, let's do some bonding. Let me pick your back hair.
Can I comb that for you? Let me get out the styling gel.
Mm.
Oh shit.
Oh man. So at the end of the day, religion is extremely wrong and extremely harmful to sexuality. People, if they use it responsibly, it's for bonding and loving and creating relationships and feeling good, relieving stress, and building a community.
Well, and the other notion that religion has that is utterly ridiculous is that if you don't talk about it, people aren't going to want to do it.
Yeah, no. That's definitely not, because that's, again, ignoring what puberty means.
Well, exactly. Like, nobody told me how to masturbate. I figured it all out on my own.
Yeah, I figured it out on my own. Well, I mean, my best friend, when we were like 12 years old, I had never masturbated before. We were sitting in her room, and she's like, hey, have you ever masturbated? And I wanted to be cool and say that I did. And she's like, you have? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, oh my God, like, go in the closet and do it. I'm like, okay. And then I went and stood in her closet in the dark, just stood there for like 30 seconds. And then I walk out, I'm like, okay. And she's like, you did it? And I was like, yeah. She's like, oh my God, what did you do? And I'm like, I don't know. I can tell you, because I had no idea what the hell I was talking about.
Well, I didn't even know what it was. I was just like, holy shit, that felt good. Let's try that again.
Right.
Hell, if I knew what I was doing, I was just like, wow. Well, I had the sense, though, that, you know, I probably don't want to do that if anybody else is remotely anywhere around.
Right.
I had that sense, but other than that, I was just like, hot damn, that was good.
Which little boys sometimes don't have that little filter of like, hey, I shouldn't put my hand down my pants in public.
Yeah. Oh, the little boy who's like absent-mindedly starts rubbing his crotch.
Yeah.
And, hey, what?
Well, here's a question though, or a comment.
Yes.
Why do you think the little boys do it, but yet are little girls actually taught that it's a no-no? And why is it only the girls that are taught? Where does that come from?
I mean, I know that babies will do rubbing in the crib, both males and females, but males will often, because the nerve patterns in females are much more internal. We do have a clitoris, obviously, but it takes a little bit different touch to create a sensation that's interesting. And the clitoris actually doesn't really enlarge on the outside too much until you're a little bit older. But in the inside, there's a lot more nerve patterns. But females aren't putting things up themselves when they're 2.
Yes.
And males, they have an external nerve pattern. And so it's a lot easier for little boys to go, something's hanging off of me. This is interesting. I'm going to mess with it and touch it versus it. But girls do, their hands do wander, absolutely. But I think it's a lot easier for a little boy to naturally go to that I guess, realization because of the external nerve patterns versus females not really having the clitoris developed.
It anyway, because when they stand to pee, they got to shake it off or they got to tuck it in their underwear, and they're always handling it anyway, and so eventually they're gonna, whoa, hey, that was different. What did I do there?
Right. But
so you don't think it's necessarily something that's taught per se between boys and girls?
I mean, I think I don't know how easy it is to differentiate between little boys just touching things because it's there and it's different. and touching things because it feels good versus females, because females really do have less to touch and less to mess with.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, we don't see little girls like with their hands down their pants and their moms having to say, no, don't do that, don't do that. It's not as common.
What I noticed more about with little girls is if they're in a dress, they'll like randomly hike their dress up.
Oh, yeah. I got in trouble at church because I did not wear underwear one time when I was like 6 years old, 7 years old, and I started twirling in the center of church, lifting up my dress, and I was like, what are you doing? I had no understanding. Like,
you're like, all right, I'm having fun here.
What? This is totally fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's a hard one.
Yeah.
But I think both sexes and the in-betweens of the spectrum, everyone touches themselves at different times, but there's absolutely a pattern.
Absolutely. And I think it's such an awful thing to not have the opportunity to really understand your own sexuality before you're suddenly expected to go out and perform. Like, I think of kids that are never taught anything and told, don't touch yourself, don't do this, don't do that. Then they get married, and suddenly the same day, it's like, okay, now go do everything.
Stalker.
Yeah.
Right. And then, I mean, because for humans, we use sex as a bonding mechanism. We want to have sex more than 5 seconds. Females need more interaction, more touching, more, I'm interested in you, and I want to make you feel good. We need more of that to show that the guy's going to stick around. So if you have a male who doesn't learn how to do any of that, it's going to be like a chimpanzee having sex, seriously. It's going to be bam, 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 and done. Why aren't you satisfied? I'm confused.
Yeah, exactly.
And the female's like, wow, you didn't satisfy me whatsoever, but I'm not allowed to be satisfied because this is about having babies.
Because God, yes.
Yeah, because God.
Well, I find it interesting, and because, like, even though I'll say my sexuality didn't develop until I was in my 20s, I could give 2 shits about it. But yet I look at somebody who, my brother, for example, he, just the fact that, because knowing our upbringing, just the fact that he got married, and I kind of compare this to the whole Josh Duggar thing, and just the fact that I have a niece and a nephew, just totally fucking blows my mind. Because I look at somebody like Josh Duggar, and although my family was not that extreme, it's like, where the fuck did he even learn about this shit?
Right.
I mean, and can you imagine? I mean, I know in the beginning, when I first became aware of this story, which was about 2 weeks prior to it breaking in the news, my initial reaction was, well, he's just doing what he was taught from mommy and daddy. Well, that event, when more information became available, I still think that, but he's just as guilty as sin, as far as, because there is some extraneous stuff that he said on the shows that made me think that he knew exactly what the fuck he was doing. Especially as he got older, and got married and stuff, and it's just like, you take a kid who has no clue about sex, and all they know about it is you make babies. That's it. It's like, and it just blows my mind, because I look at, and I'm not picking on my brother or anything like that, but it's, how the hell do I have a niece and a nephew? It's like, and I think that, looking at the Duggars, well, now they have the new show, but I can't remember the name. Debates, who's another family that's on the show. It's like, it's quiverful movement, but they know absolutely nothing about sex. They know nothing about sexuality. It's like, where are all these kids coming from?
Yeah, there is at least one thing that I always found pretty funny, is they strapped up a whole bunch of men to computers, and they did a test where they rated women 1 to 10, and they showed pictures, and they rating them, 6, 10, whatever, a whole bunch of different pictures of different men, and then they strapped some, like a mask on their face, and they allowed a flow of artificial or a synthesized kind of a vagina pheromone in a way, something that mimicked the vagina smell. And but they couldn't smell it. It was like a scentless, but it was like mimicking the vagina. And men couldn't tell when it happened. And as soon as they started it, men stopped being able to rate women correctly. They just started going 9, 9, 10, 9, 9. They just started. They had no idea that started happening. They just started finding everything attractive. So it's like, even, you know, as humans, and we think we have free will. I mean, you make a heterosexual man smell a vagina, they I guess in some ways start to go, I don't know what's happening, but I'm interested.
Wow, that's like it's like beer goggles with vagina.
Yeah, it was really funny. The guys had no idea.
Oh shit, that's hilarious. Oh, well, Rachel unfortunately has to get going. She's got some things to take care of, but well, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me. I love talking about sex and obviously evolution.
One of these days, maybe we'll have to do a more evolution-centric show, but you know, we got lots of time for that too. But in the meantime, I know we had the good professor on a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying that you guys are trying to get the show back. So if you want to take a minute and talk about that or anything else.
Yeah, we're starting it back up. Kind of, it's not going to be exactly the same, kind of a redoing, or maybe a side project kind of. We actually are even going to have most likely a new host, a friend of ours who's been podcasting. He's an atheist, really great guy, very smart guy, and we're going to try to restructure everything and maybe get something put out in the next couple weeks or so. See how it goes. So hopefully we'll have Atheists on Air revisited.
Excellent.
That. Heck yeah.
So,
well, I like the fact that you'll be concentrating maybe hopefully more on the sciences, because there really is not a lot out there unless you're hardcore science.
Right.
And bringing it, you know, more in the realm of science communication. I mean, people have to see, like, even for me listening tonight, I mean, Deb can attest to this. I blush anytime sex and sexuality comes up. I'm just I'm very Victorian in my views, but even I learned something new.
Right.
And I think that's, you know, that's important that people are exposed, even if we're speaking to the choir, you know, and we catch that one theist who might be like your friend.
Right.
You know, you catch that one theist. I think that's just so important. So
we need middlemen.
Doing that.
For sure.
Yes.
So
and I think we need more exposure of woo too, because
well, that's gonna be science, or science with Steven, for sure.
That shit is still on kind of an uptick, and that's not a good thing. So,
it's bad.
So, do you guys, you still have a website, or where can people find you?
I think we're going to be more focused on the Facebook Atheists on Air from now on, just so we can keep everything kind of in the social sphere, instead of having it like branched out through like 6 different things. So all the new stuff will probably be posted on the Atheists on Air Facebook.
Okay.
All right.
And people can find you on Facebook as well.
Yeah, Rachel Nanon, Nanon Brown, or at Rachel Nanon on Twitter.
Excellent.
All right.
All right. Well, you go and take care of your pooches, and we will have to talk with you again soon.
All right. Well, thanks for having me.
Yes.
You'll have a good one.
Thank you, Rachel.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye. Wow, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, so I honestly really did, I mean, actually learn a lot. I mean, I also said a lot, too.
That's okay.
But I do think about this stuff. Well, kind of, sort of.
A little bit here and there, right?
Yeah. Well, I think for me, because I'm looking at the whole issue with the bathroom bills, and even though I face it in my own life as far as being lesbian, trying to approach it from a transgender point of view, and a lot of people don't realize it's something that I honestly did consider when I was younger, in the 70s, early 80s. You know, am I male? Am I female? Do I want to be male? So I kind of look at it. So I I'm trying to learn more about the mindset, for lack of a better word, and what drives somebody who is female to want to be male. Did I go through that? So it's kind of an interesting to look at it from a purely non-dogmatic scientific viewpoint, from an evolutionary viewpoint, and it really opens up a lot of windows.
Well, and one thing, like when we talked about everything being on a spectrum, and it's something I think that we really are just kind of beginning to get an idea about.
Yeah.
And I struggle with that in some terms too, because for me, it's really, I've always found it an easy thing to go to think, okay, well, that person physically is male, but they feel female, and that makes sense to me, and vice versa. Like, I can think to myself, yeah, what if everybody treated me like I was a guy and I physically look like a guy, and that would not be cool for me, and I can put myself into that mindset. But where I really struggle is trying to understand someone who's non-binary. I really don't understand, like, I can't put myself into that because it's so different than anything I've ever understood. So that's something that I have a hard time wrapping my head around. So for people who are really stuck on everything's black and white, something like that is just going to be a real difficult, like for somebody like me who's pretty open-minded, and I'm sitting there going, I don't get it. I'm
Well,
trying.
you and I have talked about it in the past. Like, I have a really hard time understanding bisexuality.
Right.
I I come from the mindset that you love the partner you are with. Your goal, per se, is a long-term relationship. You're not looking for other partners. So how the fuck can you be bisexual? Now, I don't have an issue with a person being, but it's that whole mindset, and I still
Exactly.
haven't figured it out.
Just
I
for me, I that computes for me. I can get
Yeah,
bisexual.
see, you, on the other hand, get it. Me, and it's not because I don't want to. I mean, I have friends who are bisexual, and I just can't figure it out. And it's not because, it's not lack of wanting to, but I still accept them, and I still accept it. They have the same rights that I hopefully do. So trying to, it's kind of a learning curve. Like, I mean,
It is.
I can understand the issues with being transgendered a lot better than I can understand the issues with being bisexual. It's fascinating. And I think since I've been more active as an out atheist, I find myself being exposed, for lack of a better word, to these different viewpoints. And I've met some really phenomenal people just since we started doing Beyond the Trailer Park. And I know I mentioned Kelly quite a bit, but I have to readily admit that my Facebook friendship, I mean, I don't know Kelly in person other than the time she's been on our show. You know, but seeing her perspective and the work that she does has
Yes.
really opened my eyes. And that's why I know you and I joked before we were going to have Rachel on. It's like, well, I'll just sit back there and blush,
Yeah.
because, but it is something I think about, for lack of a better word, because it's like I want to understand, especially now since I'm helping a young cohort deal with the fact that and she still uses she, believes and thinks, and I'm not disputing it, that she's transgender. She wants to transition from female to male.
Right.
But the psychology side of me is thinking, okay, there might be other issues that you need to broach first. And knowing where we live, there isn't anybody even remotely qualified, in my opinion. to even, so it's like I'm trying to give her things to think about. So there's kind of a dual purpose there, and it's fascinating.
It is, and I mean, I remember even when my niece first told me years ago that, when she was still male and said I think at like 15 or 16,
Yep.
I want to be a woman. And while I had no problem with that per se, I also had the thought of, well, at this age, are we sure, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's not that I doubted them per se. It's just that I know that there was stuff when I was 15, 16-year-old that I thought was, the way things are, and I turned out to be wrong. So that's where my mindset was. It wasn't like, I don't believe you or you're too young to know. It's, I believed things at that age that I since found out weren't true. I don't want, because this is kind of a major thing, I don't want you to fall into that. Now, it turned out that she decided to remain male for a good decade. That had nothing to do with that. There were other factors at play, and we talked about that. But when she first told me, my first thought was like, holy shit, did I say or do something back then that I shouldn't have, because I thought I was being supportive, and and that stemmed from me knowing in my mind that I wasn't sure and thinking, did I say or do anything because of that,
Well, that's why I find like the whole religious perspective. I mean, if one of us was a religious, we would not most likely be having this conversation. I mean, it's phenomenal that Rachel was able to help her friend the way she did, especially coming from the perspective that her friend was coming. I mean, but like, I know there's people that, in my life that there's no way in hell I could have this conversation. Even from a purely academic standpoint, just because they reject the science behind it, just because they reject evolution.
At one point, there was that local fellow here who is an atheist, and yet he is very anti-trans, and stupid things that have no basis in fact whatsoever, but it plays into the narrative that he's comfortable with. So that's the only thing that he's going to look at. And I mean, I presented the guy with a link to peer-reviewed studies, and he
I remember that.
didn't even look at it. He was just, nope, they just he equated, well, I think I'm a dog today, so I want to go live in a kennel, like stupid shit like that. And so, we ostracize the guy, like we just don't talk to him because
I remember when you were going through that on Facebook, and I just sat there flabbergasted, because it's like, and that's why I think having Rachel on and presenting an evolutionary perspective on it is just like, this is part of who we really are. It has nothing to do with our pleasure. It's our just procreation, but our pleasure, our bonding, our mating. I mean, it has a whole gamut of ramifications, and to deny that from a science like this guy, I mean, it's like you're denying the science. I mean, science has nothing to do with being an atheist. I mean,
totally was denying
but it's just like, I even see it like, even like I have kind of delved into the whole anti-vax thing and MMS, and it's just like, I get into arguments with people that claim to be atheists, and they're denying the science behind vaccines. Just like you said, you left a whole list of links. They don't even read them.
No,
like,
we just.
And that's where I borrow Dave's whole thing. It's not the person you're arguing with; it's the audience, and I have to keep reminding myself of that, because it's like.
Although in this case now, I made it my goal to debunk this guy, because I didn't want anyone to read his shit and go, wow, that guy's an atheist too. Well, maybe there's something to what he says. That's why I felt a need, and this is even before I knew that my niece was transgender. I'm like, I even if I don't know transgender people, which I did, but it's just the common sense human thing to do. And but on the flip side, I did actually want to try and convince this guy, because it's like, he's technically part of our local group. I met this guy. It's like, wow, I met this guy in person and he's this kind of an asshole. Damn, you know? And,
yeah, it's funny that way.
And then he showed up at the non-con last summer, and I kind of laughed because my other friends and I had been arguing with him. We were like, look, if he's going to be that kind of a dick, we don't want to associate with him. And so, you know, he was sitting in the chairs and he's like waving at me like, hi. And I was just like, and walked the other way. I was like, I'm not talking to you, asshole. Like, forget it. And he
well, that's the thing, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like you don't even associate with him. It's like, I have a friend who I knew had an autistic child in her family, and for years and years, it never even dawned on me that she was anti-vax. And then we got into this guy, and I'm like, I don't want to associate with you anymore. It's like, what do you do? It's like,
and like, I remember when I met this guy at the first meetup, he seemed like a really nice fellow, and it was good conversation and all of that. And, you know, I immediately friended him on Facebook, and then to see this crop up, and it wasn't like, you know, at first he was posting it on his own page, and after a couple of discussions on there that, you know, it was obvious he didn't want to learn anything. I was like, okay, well, that's his wall. I've said my piece. You know, if you want to be an asshole on your own wall, fine. But then when he started coming to my wall,
I remember.
It's like,
yeah, you have the same rule I do. If it's on their wall, coming to my wall, you're in for it.
The only reason I went on his wall was because he actually called out Stephanie Gatormson by name.
Yes, I remember. Yeah, I remember that.
He was not friends with him and could not see the posts.
Yeah, so I remember that.
That's what I had a major problem with, because his wall was friends only. So he's out there, you know, bashing her, because he talked. She was at the conference and he had asked a bunch of stupid questions, like trying to cause shit at the conference, and Stephanie handled it beautifully, because of course, you know, she's used to that kind of shit in the public eye, unfortunately. But then, you know, so he didn't get what he wanted. So, and this was like 2 weeks later almost, he started on his wall with it and calling.
I remember that.
And I'm like, okay, you know what? I realize it's your wall, but you don't go and bash somebody where they can't defend themselves. So yeah, that's not cool. But just like the willful ignorance, I think, is what pissed me off the most.
Yeah. I mean, and it's like, I had to kind of take a step back with doing my blogging, as far as, because, you know, for people that follow my blog, I do a lot of posting on the pedophile priests and the abuses of the church and the cults and the Satanism and all that. And I was just like, I can't do this. So I figured, you know, I'd focus in on some projects that I had, you know, as far as, we'll say, science, thinking that I'd get away from the bullshit. And I was like, yeah, well, okay. It's just, I mean, the dogma is just as bad. And the thing is, like, when I look at science, I find it more dangerous, because, you know, you have people that, you know, well, case in point, like when I first had my stroke, I had people suggesting meditation and all. I have a doctor that's suggesting chiropractic on my neck, of all things, without even taking an x-ray, and where it states in my file, you know, because of I have herniated discs in both my neck and my back, that's the last thing I should have. You know, I or suggesting to me to go get acupuncture for my neuro. It's like, and I'm thinking, that kind of stuff is dangerous. It's like, doesn't matter where you go. It's like, it
Oh,
just, yeah, the woo is everywhere.
exactly. But when you think about just how negative religion impacts sexuality,
Hmm.
with what we just learned, how, as Rachel said, procreation is kind of the kind of end of it, but not necessarily what the point is, right? It's almost like a side effect.
Hmm.
Because when it boils down to it, we need the companionship and the intimacy more than we need to have babies. And when people are sitting there going, no, it's only for babies and you can't like it and you can't enjoy it and you have to do it with whoever, your family says you have to do it with, or you can only pick from these 20 people that believe the same way as we do, and it's just ridiculous. Like,
Well, then you end up with 10, 14-year-olds pregnant some of them not knowing who the father is, wandering around the local high school, thinking being pregnant is the greatest thing on the face of the earth, when it's like, you're 14 years old.
yeah, it's
I
like, oh,
mean,
God gave me a baby. It's like,
yeah,
no,
well,
you are
in
too.
their mind, it's not so much that, but it's the only reason is to have baby, and they think having baby is cool. And it's
Yeah.
like, I mean, was it maybe 2, 3 years ago? We literally in this town had an outbreak, for lack of a better word, of pregnant teenagers.
Right.
I mean, I'm sorry, but having a child, and you can ask my father this, is a lifelong commitment.
Oh,
I
yes.
mean, right? It's like, it doesn't end at 18. It
No.
doesn't end at 26. You
No.
are stuck with that child in some way, shape, or form until the day you die. I
And
mean, and I love my father, and it's very bizarre, especially being sick, that I now call my dad to get advice at 51 years old. It never ends being a parent, but it's like, I know he just went through this with my mother, because my mom had a stroke about 2, 3 years ago before she passed, and it's like, so I know he's kind of aware of what's going on in my body, because I sure as
right.
hell don't know, and I'm not going to get answers here, but it's like, these kids are literally having kids, and it's so sad to see, because you know, I know some who have the family support that are going to at least finish high school, but that's as far as they're going to go. I know some that are going to jump out of high school and never finish, and probably never have a job.
Well,
And
I
it's so sad.
I have a niece right now, and obviously
Mhm.
one, but she is 18.
No.
She dropped out of high school because she didn't like it and she had difficulties and whatnot. And she left the family home because she didn't get along with her mother, and moved in with her boyfriend, who at least he has a job, but we're living with his parents, and she's now expecting twins in the
Yeah.
fall.
Here. Yeah.
And she seems quite pleased about it, but I'm just sitting there thinking, you have almost no education. She's not working right now because she's pregnant and wasn't feeling well and whatever. And I'm just thinking, now luckily her boyfriend seems like a really good kid and seems to be, he's worked the entire time they've been together, and he's been pretty supportive and whatnot. But in this day and age, for a 20 something kid with a 18-year-old girlfriend and twins, I'm just like,
Mhm.
glad you're
It's
happy,
scary.
but yeah. Which,
But yet the religiotards only want to teach abstinence only, and we all know right against it.
once it happens, there's only one thing that matters. Once it happens, is that you make sure it happens, and then fuck the
Yeah,
rest of
yeah. I mean, and that's why, I mean, the whole idea, I mean, with evolution and sexuality and sex and all that. It's like it is all related because then you tie into the whole abortion issue, and then you tie into the whole poverty issue, and it has ramifications right down the line, not just with whether you're who you're fucking.
Absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and play your segment, because, well, actually, by the time we're done that, it'll be time to wrap it up pretty much. So we'll go ahead with that. And this is part 2 from last week, yes?
No, this is part 1 of a new series.
All right.
Yeah, this one came up in the midst of the other one. The story itself is not old, but it centers around what started. It was Andrew Wakefield's claim of persecution, but in order to get into that, I revamped an older segment I did from another platform. So it's going to be, I explain it in the segment, but it I've put about 45,000 words on quote paper this week just doing this one. So it was already pre-written while I was working on the other one.
Well, look what happens when she gets her eye fixed, people. Suddenly she starts exploding words. So when she gets the other one, look out, because,
Well, it's good to feel human again.
I can well imagine. All right, well, let's go ahead and do that. And this one's about 15 minutes long, and then we'll come back and wrap things up. And I just want to say hi, Trippin. I did see you over there. We're kind of in the zone there, but I did see you, so good to see you there. So we'll go ahead and take a look at this, and then we'll be back in about 15 minutes and wrap things up.
Did you want to go to Reason Rally 2016 on June 4th and can't afford it? Do you want your group to be a part of the biggest atheist and free thought rally in 2016? Now is your chance. Reason Rally 2016 is looking for groups that want to come to the Reason Rally for a great rate. Reason Rally is working with rallybus.net, your online crowdsourced event bus sharing, to bring you to the Reason Rally and to take you home. Go to rallybus.net/reason-rally and sign up today. We need bus captains and organizers to set up groups of 40 or more that can meet up in major cities and ride share. Go to rallybus.net/reason-rally to set yours up today.
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to Havoc and Chaos Live. Weekly look at some of the batshittery we call news and the pals, pundits, and other off-the-wall people, myself included, who claim to know what is really going on in our world. I'm an atheist, a lesbian, and I have bipolar disorder, among other things. Therefore, hate of any kind is not welcome in my world. I'm opinionated, and my impulse control went by the wayside months ago, so I say what I feel. In other words, stupid, smart people piss me the fuck off. Be forewarned, I'm highly excitable, and if you are easily offended by 4-letter words or longer, you may want to go and listen to something else. I really need a new intro. I will take suggestions. Thank you. Tonight, we are going to take a bit of a road trip. While information gathering for the episodes concerning Kent Hovind and Mary Toko, a story began to emerge. Andrew Wakefield's movie, Vaxxed, was removed from the Tribeca Film Festival. I'm not planning, although we know how that can change, on another tirade into the anti-vax movement. Wakefield, with his fabricated study, along with financial shenanigans, has thoroughly been trashed by those much better than I. What is at issue? Have Wakefield's First Amendment rights been trampled on? It is an issue I was going to address in regards to Phil Robertson and the Duck Dynasty A&E flap, but destiny took me elsewhere. So today, and probably next week, and maybe even the week after that, we will take a look-see. Were Wakefield's and Robertson's rights trampled? The simple answer is no. The simple explanation is neither Tribeca nor A&E are considered government agencies. As we all know, I don't like simple. Makes for very short diatribes. First, though, we will have to take in a bit of history. While it deals with SOCUS, or separation of church and state, primarily, there are ramifications in regard to the other part of the First Amendment that people seem to conveniently forget, that of free speech. This is part of a show that I did while associated with another radio platform. It was initially geared towards the pagan community, those that held, shall we say, non-traditional religious beliefs, those that considered their talents gifts from God, which, for all intents and purposes, we as atheists hold non-traditional religious views, or don't hold, as the case may be. It was for those that felt themselves safe because in their minds they were Christian enough. I have revamped it a bit to fit my needs for tonight because the information is valid regardless of what your religious affiliation is. It's a primer on SOCUS that I tinker with in an effort to make my presentation better. As I mentioned prior, its relevance will become important in the next couple of weeks when I hope to discuss the movie Vaxxed and Andrew Wakefield's expression of persecution and censorship, along with the CDC Thompson debacle, which is part of the gist of the movie. But it also ties into our current election season here in the United States as well. SOCUS issues are again, or I should say still in the spotlight. As many of you know, I follow SOCUS issues pretty close, especially concerning the faux religious liberty issues in regards to LGBTQI discrimination, and also the rise of the dominionist or theocratic movement. As non-believers, the implication of SOCUS are quite obvious. But what about the so-called liberal or progressive Christians that many within our community like to reach out to, the interfaith movement? How would the issue of SOCUS affect them? And it does, and not in a roundabout fashion either, as many may think. Now, I know many of you have seen some of the more egregious political and religious rhetoric that I've posted on Facebook and via my blog from what I call the right. It doesn't really matter how you label them: moral majority, religious right, Tea Party, GOTP, assholes, etc. Many pundits, many politicians, pulpits, and celebrities have been espousing this rhetoric and a return to what they call the biblical or Christian roots of our founding fathers. The problem is they have twisted and perverted what the founders have said, a la David Barton, so that it's hard to know what the original intent was. Now, there's a clip I really wish I could play the whole thing. It's courtesy of People for the American Way, PFA, but time constraints will not allow for it. It's a 7-minute mini documentary entitled The Religious Right Then and Now, and it highlights the right near the peak of their power in 1992 at the Republican National Convention, which was held in the Houston Astrodome. Now, you're obviously not going to check it out now, but think of this when you do watch it. How have things changed? And to give you a little bit bigger picture, so to speak, I have a brief timeline in the show notes, and it highlights the fact that this movement is a very well thought out and continuing plan. And you've heard me speak of it before. Part of it is the 15% solution. Another part of it is the Manhattan Declaration, which I haven't spoke on yet, and the Wedge document, which friend of the show, Dave Foda, is a fan of. And that's another issue I will be taking up sometime soon. But before we continue, there are two very simplistic points to keep in mind while cruising through this topic. One, I want you all to do a bit of a fill in the blank, hypothetically, since I'm assuming I'm speaking to the choir. Church-state separation doesn't affect me because I am whatever traditional or non-traditional belief system you may practice. Now, keep that in mind and consider this point. Number two, which Bible and which form or denomination of Christianity, keeping in mind that currently there's over 41,000 different Christian denominations or organizations worldwide, with approximately 1,500 of those groups within the U.S. Also, even though we don't know the exact number of English translations, since 1526, when Tyndale's New Testament began circulating, the number of translations or paraphrases, partial or full, is around 900. I've actually seen numbers as high as 3,300. So keep that in mind as we go through this. Do you see where I'm leading with this? This notion is what drives me bonkers. They do not realize that within the dominionist ideology, they are not the right kind of Christian. and read the wrong Bible. More on that later. So exactly what are we talking about? Very simply, really, the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which states, quote,
Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances.
The part we're most interested in at the moment, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Keep in mind who this is speaking to. Congress. Put another way, the government, whether it be local, state, or federal. As part of the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments were ratified on December 15, 1791. Prior to the enactment of the 14th Amendment in 1868, the Supreme Court generally held that the protections of the Bill of Rights did not apply to state governments. This is why some within the Reich want the 14th Amendment removed. Reason being, it is the basis of many civil liberty cases currently before the courts. By virtue of the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment, most of the Bill of Rights now apply to the state and local governments. In Section 1 it states,
Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law.
It wasn't until the Everson v. Board of Education in 1947 that the Establishment Clause was fully incorporated, and that basically means made to apply against the states. It was then that the phrase separation between church and state, as attributed to Thomas Jefferson, became the mainstay central to this issue. Now, just kind of a brief note, while much of the debate concerning the 14th Amendment generally centers around birthright citizenship, it is held by some that the Equal Protection Clause was not intended to prohibit discrimination as currently held by the courts. I'm not going to get into that debate at the moment. But bear in mind, some want the right to discriminate. Now, numerous court cases have been held throughout our history, as far back as 1879, and the court has always looked at our history as a republic in deciding such cases. Justice Hugo Black in Everson sums up the whole issue very succinctly. Quote,
The Establishment of Religion Clause of the First Amendment means at least this. Neither a state nor the federal government can set up a church. Neither can pass laws which aid one religion, aid all religions, or prefer one religion over another. Neither can force nor influence a person to go to or remain away from church against his will, or force him to profess a belief or disbelief in any religion. No person can be punished for entertaining or professing religious beliefs or disbeliefs, for church attendance or non-attendance. No tax in any amount, large or small, can be levied to support any religious activities or institutions, whatever they may be called, or whatever form they may adopt to teach or practice religion. Neither a state nor the federal government can openly or secretly participate in the affairs of any religious organizations or group, and vice versa. In the words of Jefferson, the clause against establishment of religion by law was intended to erect a wall of separation between church and state. See also Reynolds v. United States.
end quote. What makes Black's opinion so powerful? Not only does Justice Black rely on Jefferson's letter to the Danbury Baptist Association, but also the words of James Madison, Memorial and Remonstrance Against Religious Assessment, who, by the way, wrote the First Amendment. So, as you can see, this is not a new issue. It's not some recent atheistic or secular agenda. It's an issue with a long history in our country. And if you ever have the time, you really should read Black's opinion, starting around page 8. He gives a wonderful history lesson concerning religious freedoms in our country, and the why of our Constitution being the secular document that it is, contrary to what David Barton and his ilk may have you believe. The takeaway I want for this segment for you to have or to leave you with is this. There is no gray area where the First Amendment is concerned. The founders were quite adamant in regards to SOPIS, as well as issues of free speech. They only pertain to the government. SOCUS is not new. The separation of powers refers to the government, not private individuals or businesses. In other words, you can have an opinion, but the First and the 14th Amendment do not protect you from criticism or ramifications thereof. And in regards to politics alone, religious liberty is still a huge issue. So, in light of Wakefield crime file, along with Robertson and if you remember the Chick-fil-A guy who went through the drive-thru and then videotaped it and posted it, no wonder why he lost his job. When one looks at the entire First Amendment, minus the Reconstructionist lens, it's fairly plain and simple. Next week, we may take a look at the Wedge document, or we may continue with the Dominionist theme. Haven't decided yet. But in any event, let's go back to Rachel Nanon Brown and our discussion on evolution and sexuality and how the two are intertwined.
Aha.
That's the part about throwing in a segue back into the show.
Well, we do prefer to do them sort of in the middle, but it makes more sense if our guest has to leave early than instead of losing time in the middle.
Yeah.
So that's all
yeah,
right.
no, it's. But we're still talking our topic.
We are. Well, we for a few minutes. We're almost out of time.
Yeah. I just thought it was kind of interesting because of Rachel's background in paleontology and her interest in evolution and stuff, it being in the sciences. It does really tie in. I mean, this whole mindset, evolution versus creationism. And not only does it have ramifications in sexuality, but it has ramifications in all aspects. And if you look at it, I mean, and this is the point I bring out in part 2, is that even though, like in the anti-vax movement, for example, people don't realize there is a religious viewpoint to it, and this is kind of what started it. Was Hovind and Mary Telko from, if you remember my segment the last 2 weeks, dealing with the anti-vax movement and the religious ramifications, because there are some in the anti-vax movement who use religion as their justification for not vaccinating. And, basically it comes down to the whole naturalistic fallacy of where, vaccines aren't natural, they're man-made. We're supposed to get these diseases and build up a natural immunity. Well, natural immunity is deaf, people.
Yes.
And so it does tie in, and it not only just with sexuality and the harms that it causes in that aspect, but the harms that it causes to society as a whole. I mean, mentioning the whole polio incident in the previous segments, whereas, before the vaccine, you had people ending up in iron lungs.
Yes.
Before the eradication of smallpox, I don't know if you guys have ever seen pictures of what smallpox does to especially a child, whether they're a toddler or a young child. The pictures are just, I don't even know how to, I mean, I've seen some pretty nasty shit, but to put a child through that, I mean, chicken pox are bad enough. Smallpox is like,
I had chicken pox and that sucked. Let me tell you.
I mean, imagine that 1,000 times over. I don't know if smallpox had the itchiness or not that you get with chickenpox. I think I had chickenpox, but I don't know, or I had a mild case of it. I don't remember. But it's like, I mean, just to imagine a child going through that.
Well, yeah. I think smallpox was so nasty that I don't think that you even got the itchy. You were just like, feel like I'm going to die.
I mean, I remember back in the 70s, like, it was the tail end of the whole polio scare. But I remember in school, one year we left school, came back the next, and we were missing a classmate to find out that this I can't remember whether he or she got polio. And I remember the public school scares where they had to close down, even in the 70s, and that was 20 years, almost 20 years after the vaccination. So even for me, I mean, I saw the tail end of it, and I don't remember who this girl was, maybe for the life of me now, but I remember those scares. Now, people of my parents' generation, they lived through it.
Yes.
It's like, uh, we don't see that. So, I mean, denying evolution, denying science, denying the science behind it, it has really nasty ramifications, whether it be, sexuality, whether it be vaccinations, whether it be the use of GMOs, it it's just bad. And I thought the religious bullshit was bad. The anti-science bullshit is just as bad, if not
Well,
worse.
and one causes the other a lot of the time. So
Mm-hmm.
it's
Well,
not,
it does in Texas. I mean, they have it written right in their quote
it's
platform for the
the
Republican Party.
mentality between even the anti-vax, anti-science crowd that are not religious. It's still the same mentality that I'm special because I know something that you don't. I'm not being fooled by the man or the government or Satan or I'm not being fooled, but you're being fooled, and I can see, what you can't see. And it's just ridiculous because in reality there's nothing there to see. They just want that sort of I know better than everybody. It's the same as conspiracy nuts. It's the
Well,
same.
it's not even the conspiracy. You kind of hit the nail on the head with the whole "I'm special," and that takes us back to the whole Kim Davis affair. And one of the things I found this week really kind of interesting as I was working on part 2. As I said, I have most of it written, and I do script out what I say because numbskull, and God knows what I'd say. But it's like I'm finding it really funny how a lot of the topics I'm doing, as divergent as they are actually connected when you look at it through the lens of religion. And one point to make clear is this anti-science sentiment is not just a right-wing nut job thing. You have people on the left just as bad.
Uh-oh. You froze up for a second there. You still frozen?
Have the religion good measure, but it's not a.
I lost her video.
Oh,
That's good.
it
Are you there? Uh-oh. I think we might have lost her. In which case, it's about that time anyway, so I think I'm going to go ahead and, are you there?
Can you hear me?
There, now I can. I lost your video and everything for a second.
Yeah, that's like I could hear you perfectly, but nothing. But yeah, they're all connected. So go ahead and finish out the show.
All right. Well, first of all, where can we find you?
The easiest way right now is most of my writing is I'm just posting articles is on Twitter at Doom9998. That connects to my blog that I have not been blogging much lately, other than show notes and stuff related. And that's on Havoc and Chaos, and that's on blogger.com. And both of them connect to my Facebook, which is Beth A. Hambridge. Use the A, or you get my vanilla page, which has not much there. So
Awesome. Of course, you can also see, you're all garbly again. You can also see me on Holy Crap, the vlogcast, which is Sunday mornings at 12:05 a.m. Eastern. Holy Crap TV. You can find online and on the Facebook. Of course, we'll be here next week. I don't know what the hell we're doing next week, so it's going to be a surprise. We'll see who we can find or what we can figure out to talk about. Of course, Miss Ashley, you can find her at nrrpodcast.com. NoReligionRequired.com is the new No Religion Required blog, where I've been posting, and Bobby C has been posting, and a number of the NRR family. Some really interesting topics over there. You can also find her at Miss_Ashley NRR, and she's got her Miss Ashley Facebook page and all that fun stuff. So yeah, we'll be back here next week, and until then, we will leave everybody with our friend Dave Foda and the Humanist Creed.
I know the truth and power of reason and of rational thinking, and I will use them to my advantage. I know the truth and power of educating myself and of expanding my intellectual boundaries, and I will educate myself. I know the truth and power of vanquishing ignorance, and I will do so whenever the opportunity presents itself. I know the truth and power of morality without supervision, and of true and accurate righteousness. I know the truth and power of obliterating tyranny, be it intellectual, emotional, or philosophical, and will work toward that goal whenever and however possible. I know the truth and power of human ingenuity. I know the truth and power of human compassion, and I will be mindful of the welfare of others. I know the truth and power of equality and fairness for all living things. I know the truth and power of the importance of our families, our friends, and our fellow men and women. I know the truth and power of human stewardship of our lands, our waters, and our skies, and I will try to act to preserve our environment. I know the truth and power of the sciences of mathematics, of physics, and of chemistry, and of the important role of these disciplines in understanding the workings of this cosmos. I know the truth and power of the rejection of all notions or beliefs that reside in the supernatural or the superstitious, and of those notions or beliefs that we are not supposed to be able to explain. And I know that these rejections are necessary for humankind's survival. I am a human being with a free mind, liberated from irrational influence and from unreasonable dogma.